Tonic and Cramel Shampoo present the new Adventures of Sherlock Holmes, starring Benamati as Dr. Watson and Sean Adams as Sherlock Holmes. Now, once again, it's time to keep that weekly appointment with our good friend and host, Dr. Watson. Good evening, Dr. Watson.
Good evening, Mr. Bell. As usual, you're punctual to the minute. Pull up a chair and make yourself comfortable.
Thank you.
That's it.
I see that you have the old black tin dispatch box out again, Dr. Watson. I deduce that you were going over your notes on tonight's case.
Elementary, my dear boy. Among the records, I came across some notes of some cases I'd almost forgotten. The shocking death of Crosby the banker, the Addleton tragedy, and some data on the unusual contents of the ancient British pharaoh.
Those stories sound pretty intriguing, Dr. Watson.
I shall tell them to you some other evening, Mr. Bell. Tonight, I'm going to recount an adventure that took place in the heart of the beautiful English countryside. I call it The Adventure of the Tolling Bell. Well, that story began in a small country village of Conforth. Holmes had recently brought to the successful conclusion the affair of the Burrow and Furnace wheelchair murders, and we decided a few days' rest in a nearby Conforth would do us good before returning to our arduous life on Baker Street. We were staying in a small but comfortable inn. As we sat there by the open window, a nearby church bell was tolling a funeral knell. There must be a funeral in the village, Holmes.
An astonishing deduction, Watson.
There's no need to make fun of me. Impressing sound, isn't it?
I suppose so. Has it ever occurred to you, Watson, that the history of bells is full of romantic interest?
Well, I can't say I've thought much about it.
Almost every historical event has been accompanied by the sound of bells. They summoned soldiers to arms as well as Christians to church. They sounded the alarm in the Multan invasion, and many a bloody chapter in history has been rung in and out by bells.
Well, you seem to be a mind of information on the subject.
Yes, Watson. It's a fascinating subject.
Come in, come in. Good morning, my dear.
Pardon me, gentlemen. I brought your tea and your shaving water. Mrs. Michael said to say your breakfast will be ready in half an hour.
Splendid, Marion. Mary, the church bell is tolling a funeral now. Do you know who's being buried?
I do, sir. I wish it was me. It will be my turn soon.
Poor thing. I wonder what's the matter with her.
I have no idea.
Perhaps her father or mother just died. Or a young man. Yes, I bet that's it. She's a pretty girl. She's obviously been crying when she came in. Perhaps that's her fiancé they're burying now.
Watson, you have the sentimental imagination of a true storyteller. But we've come here for a holiday. You must give your imagination a rest too. So, drink your tea, remove your whiskers, and we'll go downstairs and investigate those kippers.
You like your kippers, gentlemen?
Excellent, Miss Michael, excellent. Never eaten better.
Yes, indeed. By the way, Mrs. Michael, we heard the funeral bell tolling earlier on. Do you know who it was being buried?
Yes, I do. 2 souls were being buried, and one of them was a murderer.
A murderer? Lord, in this peaceful village.
What happened, Mrs. Michael?
Old Threadgold, the corn merchant, found out his wife had been gallivanting around with a young fellow from Bolton. Cut her throat, he did, and then hanged himself. More tea?
Thank you.
Shocking. So the peaceful countryside is not as peaceful as it made out to be, Holmes.
Indeed, Watson. Has the Morning Post arrived yet, Mrs. Michael?
Here comes old Gilly up the path with it now. I'll see if he's got anything for you.
A murder? What do you make of it, Holmes?
What is there to make of it, Watson? A jealous husband murders a faithless wife and then commits suicide. A tragic story, but a simple one.
Top of the morning to you, gentlemen.
Good morning, Gillian. Any letters for me today?
Aye, Mr. Holmes. 2 letters. One of them's got some newspaper clippings in it, I think. And you got a postcard from Mr. Lestrade. He wants you back in London bad, Mr. Holmes. There you are.
Pardon myself, Gilly. You've been reading Mr. Holmes' private correspondence.
Bless your heart, Dr. Watson. If I didn't read other people's correspondence, how would I know what's going on in the village?
You were right, Gilly. It is newspaper clippings. And by the way, you heard about the murder of Mrs. Threadgold, I suppose?
Heard about it? I told the bell this morning at the funeral.
Did you say that you're the bell ringer as well as the postman?
Bless your heart, yes, Doctor. President of the Choral Society too, as well as being on the Parish Council.
You're a busy man, Gillian.
That I am, sir. Take this afternoon now. I'm to bring those bells again.
Not another funeral, surely.
Oh, sir, a wedding this time.
I'm glad to hear it.
Young St. Perry is marrying the Slater girl, and you might say I'm responsible for bringing them together. Got some of their letters mixed up, I did. They looked each other up to exchange them, and presto, before you know what's happening, they're getting married. Regular Cupid, you might say I am. Oh, be off with you, Gilly. Other people want their letters. Mr. Holmes doesn't want his kippers spoiled with your idle chatter. All right, Miss Crabapples in vinegar. Oh. One of these fine days you'll smile and the world will come to an end. Good day, gentlemen. Oh, talkative old busybody he is. Oh, Mr. Holmes, Mrs. Lackland's in the hall. The poor old lady is most anxious to talk to you.
Mrs. Lackland?
She has the seamstress shop on the High Street. Her only son ran away from home a few months back. I think that's what she wants to speak to you about.
But my friend's here for rest, Miss Michael.
I told her that, Doctor, but she won't go away without seeing Mr. Holmes.
Oh, very well. Ask her to come in, please, Mrs. Michael.
Yes, Mr. Holmes.
Oh, don't bother to see her, Holmes. Sounds like a trivial matter.
The disappearance of an only son can never be a trivial matter.
Well, I meant trivial for you, not for her.
This is Mr. Holmes and Dr. Watson, dear. Thank you, Annie. Good morning, sirs.
Good morning.
Good morning. Please, sit down, Mrs. Lackland. That's it. Now, what's the trouble?
It's Tom, sir. The only son. He left me 4 months ago, and I've not seen hide nor hair of him since.
You've had no message from him since he left?
Not one word, and a fair out of me mind, sir.
Have you any idea of his reason for leaving the village, Mrs. Lackland?
None, sir. He was a good boy, and he worked hard, and he didn't fool around with those flibbity-gibbet girls in the village. I think he's met with foul play, gentlemen, and I want you to find out about him for me, Mr. Holmes. I've heard say in the village that you're the greatest detective in England.
Mrs. Lackland, I'd be glad to help you, but you've given me no clues to work with. I'm afraid
that money you want. I've got £20 in my savings. It's all yours if you can bring my Tommy home to me. Or at least tell me he's safe.
Mrs. Lackland, I wouldn't dream of accepting a fee.
Oh.
However, I shall give your problem some thought. If I arrive at any conclusions, I'll get in touch with you at once.
God bless you, Mr. Holmes. Good morning to you, sirs.
Good day.
Good morning, Miss Lackland. Poor old thing. I don't see how you can help her, Holmes.
Nor do I, at the moment. But a young man who has grown up in a small village like this may have led a life that his mother is totally unaware of. You said that you have work on one of your stories today, Watson?
Yes, I have a letter from the editor of the Strand magazine yesterday requesting a manuscript as soon as possible.
Splendid. Then you must stay at the inn and work on your latest masterpiece, while I scour the village to see what may be found about this missing young man.
There you are, Holmes. I was beginning to think you got lost.
Hello, Watson. I trust you had a profitable session with pen and paper.
I got about half a chapter. I would have done more if it hadn't been for those infernal bells.
The wedding ceremony that the worthy Gillian told us about this morning. Oh, I'm tired.
What did you find out about Mrs. Laughlin's son?
Among other things, that he had a secret love life unknown to his mother, and the object of his affections was none other than the maid who brought us our morning tea.
Mary? Did you talk to her?
No, it's a half-day off and I was unable to find her, but I shall question her when she brings us our tea tomorrow morning. Come in, Mary.
Oh, Miss Michael.
Good morning, gentlemen. Here's your tea and shaving water.
Where's Mary this morning?
Oh, she didn't come to work. Must be ill again. Not a reliable girl, and no better than she ought to be, if you ask me. It's no job for me to be carrying tea and hot water upstairs.
I hear the village bell tolling for another funeral. Does Conforth have a burial every morning?
Oh, it's another suicide, sir.
Another suicide? Good Lord.
Old John Letterby the baker. He was expecting some money from his son in Australia. It never came, and they foreclosed on his shop, and he hanged himself. Will you be wanting a couple of boiled eggs to your breakfast, gentlemen?
No, I haven't much of an appetite. Thank you very much.
Yes, sir.
That woman seems absolutely heartless. She almost smacks her lips when she tells us about these tragedies.
Yes, Watson, I noticed it. This peaceful village is beginning to seem strangely sinister to me. And since you have no appetite for breakfast, perhaps you'll join me in a little excursion as soon as you're dressed.
Of course. Where are we going?
To see the maid, Mary. I'm anxious to talk to her before another funeral bell begins to toll.